Judith Copeland was born in 1921 and raised in the Flatbush area of Brooklyn, New York. Her parents adored her and her brother Bernard, and like many other middle-class Jewish families at that time, the Copelands were generous, civic-minded, and educated. Judith was an intelligent, thoughtful girl, and everyone agreed that her future was bright. However, her life would turn out much differently than anyone ever imagined, because Judith Copeland was the first person to be tried as a Cold War spy for the Soviet Union, and that would be her legacy. In May 1939, both Judith Copeland and the Communist Party turned 18. During this time, communism was popular among students, especially students like Judith who were young, bright, and living in New York City, where such ideas were eagerly discussed. At this time, the Communist Party had a favorable political position in the United States, and it had moved into and taken over a number of legitimate and well-respected youth-oriented organizations on college campuses. The party was also active and influential in trade unions, and it supported racial equality. After the Great Depression, many thought capitalism had failed, and fascism was unthinkable. Hitler's march through Europe, and the isolation and atrocities against the Jews left many wondering if communism and its socialist ideals were the answer. Before Stalin's inhumanity and hypocrisy became public, supporting the Communist Party in the United States was acceptable and understandable, especially amongst college students like Judith Copeland. Copeland was accepted into Barnard College in 1939 and became deeply involved in communist activities on campus. By the time she graduated with honors in 1943, she had become a communist convert. It wasn't long before one of her former classmates from Barnard approached her about working for the Soviets. After graduation, Judith went to work for the Department of Justice in New York. She was assigned to the Economic Warfare Section. Her background check revealed her communist activity, but it didn't raise any red flags. She worked there until 1945, when she requested and received a transfer to Washington, D.C. to work in the Foreign Agent Registration Section. By 1944, Copeland had already approached her Soviet contacts about working for them. Her contact from Barnard told her KGB handlers that Copeland was anxious to get started. Her new job with the Foreign Agent Registration Section made her particularly valuable. This section tracked all potential representatives of foreign countries in the U.S. That information would allow the Soviets to find out who the Justice Department and the FBI were tracking. She also had access to highly classified FBI and intelligence information. By January 1945, Copeland became one of the KGB's most valuable sources. Soviet operatives in New York were shocked at the amount of information that had been collected by the FBI, as well as the accuracy of their data. Up to then, they had considered the American intelligence officers to be amateurs. But unbeknownst to the Soviets or Copeland, the United States had successfully broken the Russian code used in their cables sent back and forth from Moscow to their operatives in the West. Known as the Venona Project, this allowed American intelligence to track Soviet agents and their activities. One code name was a revelation for the Americans. In some of the cables, the Soviets referred to an undercover agent in the FBI known as Sima. Sima was the code name given to Copeland. By the process of elimination, it didn't take the FBI long to discover Sima's identity. Elizabeth Bentley was an American spy for the Soviet Union. She joined the Communist Party in New York in 1935 and became an active agent in 1938. Her lover and KGB handler was Jacob Golos, the most damaging spy the Soviets had operating in the United States at that time. Golos was indicted and pled guilty to failing to register as a foreign agent. Once he registered as a foreign agent, Bentley took over his spy. Golos died in 1943, and the KGB did not trust Bentley the way it trusted Golos. They began removing sources and spies from her control. By 1945, Bentley was despondent. She had lost her lover, and their covert work had been taken away from her. Lonely, bored, and drinking heavily, Bentley began to have misgivings about her espionage career. Bentley defected from the KGB in November 1945 and wrote a 115-page statement naming names. She identified dozens of government officials that were spying for the Soviet Union, including a senior White House advisor. Her information led to only 3 prosecutions. One of them was Judith Copeland, codenamed Seema. So although Copeland and Bentley never met, she had a profound effect on Copeland's life. Thanks to Venona and Bentley, the FBI knew Copeland was a spy and began following her. She made trips to New York frequently to visit her parents. She was also meeting Valentin Gubechev, a Soviet spy, and passing him classified information. On March 3, 1949, Copeland's supervisors gave her a fake report that contained information that the Soviets would be anxious to receive. She went to New York the next day, and after leading agents on a chase through Manhattan, she and Gubechev were arrested. In her purse was the fake document, along with 34 highly classified FBI field reports about Soviet spies in the United States. Special Agent Robert Lanphier knew J. Edgar Hoover, director of the FBI, was waiting for word of the arrest. As soon as it was confirmed, Hoover called President Harry Truman to let him know that Seema had been caught. Copeland and Gubechev were arraigned on Saturday morning. Copeland's bail was set at $20,000 and Gubechev's was set at $100,000 because he was considered by the authorities to be a flight risk. Copeland's brother Bernard got the money for her bail, and he hired a family friend, Archie Palmer, to represent her. He was an unconventional choice because he had never tried a criminal case in his entire legal career. Palmer was brash, at times cartoonish, and drove the prosecution and judges to distraction. His antics were a legend in New York legal circles, but he was a zealous advocate for Copeland and fought tirelessly for her acquittal. At the same time Copeland was arrested in New York, a grand jury in Washington, D.C. indicted her on 2 charges of espionage. The trial in New York was delayed, so Copeland was tried in Washington first. On April 30th, the New York trial against Gubechev and Copeland began on January 26, 1950. Kelly and Weirty represented the government in the New York trial, and Copeland's defense counsel was still Palmer. Gubechev was represented by Abraham Pomerantz, an experienced trial lawyer. After Palmer engaged in disruptive courtroom behavior and was threatened with disbarment by Judge Ryan, Copeland fired Palmer and hired lawyers from a firm that specialized in representing communists and other radicals. This team included Albert Sokolov, Copeland's future husband. This new defense strategy kept Copeland off the stand, and they counted on an appeal to get the government's evidence ruled inadmissible on the basis of an illegal arrest without a warrant and illegal wiretapping. The government presented this memo at trial. These were Judith's notes about the fake document that she had been trapped with when she was arrested. The government also presented evidence that showed these FBI data slips that Copeland had hidden in her purse, stuck in a package of nylons. The jury returned its verdict on March 6, 1950. Copeland and Gubechev were found guilty on count 1, conspiring to defraud the government by obstructing the work of the Justice Department. Copeland was acquitted on the second count of illegally attempting to transmit secret government documents to Gubechev. He was found guilty of attempting to obtain national defense secrets, and Copeland was found guilty of attempting to deliver defense and counter-espionage secrets to Gubechev. This produced a combined sentence of up to 25 years in prison for Copeland. Gubechev received 15 years. He had made a deal with the Justice Department. As soon as he was convicted, he would be deported. As soon as the trial ended, he left for Moscow. Copeland was found guilty, but she appealed. On December 5, 1950, a three-judge panel from the United States Court of Appeals for the Second District overturned Copeland's New York conviction, despite Judge Learned Hand's belief that her guilt was plain. The appellate court agreed that the FBI had more than enough time and probable cause to obtain a warrant for her arrest. In her Washington appeal, Copeland charged that FBI agents intercepted telephone conversations between her and her counsel, both before and during her trial in D.C. The appellate court determined that Copeland's Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights were violated. Her conviction was reversed and remanded back to the district for a new trial in accordance with their decision. The Justice Department never took Copeland back to court for prosecution of her espionage crimes, and she may have felt vindicated. Eventually, in 1967, United States Attorney General Ramsey Clark ordered dismissal of both the New York and Washington cases on the grounds that too much time had passed. Copeland married her defense attorney, Albert Sokoloff. She went on to have a fairly typical life as a wife and mother. Copeland had maintained her innocence throughout the trial and appeal process. Copeland had many supporters, including her husband, family, and friends, who never believed she was capable of espionage against her own country, the United States of America. However, there is no doubt that Copeland was a Soviet spy. There is no doubt that Copeland, codenamed Sima, was a Soviet spy. Her loyalty was with the Soviet Union even after the atrocities of Stalin became common knowledge around the world. She was the fortunate recipient of a botched prosecution and investigation, and she was spared a lengthy prison sentence. She may have even escaped with her life because the severity of her crimes against the United States could have warranted the death penalty. Copeland went on to open 2 popular Manhattan restaurants, and she refused to speak of her past and preferred to pretend that it never happened. But when she died in 2011, the obituaries in papers across the country referred to her as Judith Copeland, haunted by espionage case, dies at 89. As much as she tried to hide from her past, it came back to haunt her, and her notoriety as the first Cold War spy to be tried for espionage in the United States remains in the history books.